I finally ended the relationship, but I know from past experience how manipulative he can be. I'm scared of falling into the same traps or making decisions that might backfire. What mistakes should I avoid now that it's over, and how can I protect myself from being pulled back in?
Oh, yeah. Leaving a relationship with a narcissist is not easy because they don't want you to leave. It can feel like they are losing control, they're losing their supply, and so they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep you in the relationship. And it's also the most dangerous time because the risk of violence goes up significantly in the first 18 months of leaving an abusive relationship. But getting out is so important and possible. And so, here are some things everyone can do to protect themselves from getting trapped or pulled back in by the narcissist so that when you leave for good. Okay. The first, before we leave, don't tell them too much and don't tell them too soon in the process. Don't let them in on your plans because they'll do everything they can to sabotage. And so you're going to put the pieces together with yourself and with a small trusted circle of people, and you're only going to let them know things as you're doing it or after you've already done it. And then if you leave, you're not going to let them know about your new home or where you work or if you have to change your phone number, right? So we really want to keep them in the dark so they can't use it against us. We also want to make sure that we're not maintaining any more communication than is required. Best case scenario, go no contact. If you can't, because a lot of times people can't, then we only want to talk as little as is required. So, like if you have kids or you're coordinating a divorce, you're splitting assets, you see them at work, stuff like that. Only going to talk what's required. We're not going to talk about personal things. We're going to hold boundaries around ourselves to not answer questions about our personal life. They're not entitled to that information anymore. We're not going to answer if they are combative or harassing. You might even put up like a range of contact hours where if they contact you outside of that, you're not going to answer. And don't talk about the relationship or what went wrong because they will use that as a pathway to convince you that they're getting better. And so holding that boundary of we don't talk about personal relationship stuff anymore. I'm not going to try to like get closure or unpack with them. They are incapable of being a reliable resource. Okay. We want to fight daydreams or fantasize about things getting better. Our daydreams and nostalgia are liars. They were not good to us. They will not become good to us. And even if they become good enough, they still harmed us and damaged us, and they don't deserve us back. And so, really work on protecting yourself from your own fantasies and stay true to what is the truth. We want to make sure we're not engaging in self neglect or self harm. You just had a relationship with someone who harmed you and neglected you. Don't mirror that back onto yourself. Put a high priority in taking care of yourself and nursing yourself back to health and bringing yourself back to a fuller life. Because if you leave a narcissistic partner, and this is not choice, get help for this, right? But if you are then plunged into like this dark hole of self harm and self neglect and things feel really terrible, we might get tricked that, oh, this, I feel so bad because I left them. I need to go back. But no, we feel so bad because we're nursing the wounds of what they did to us. There's a healing period here. We don't need them to heal. They're just going to keep inflicting harm. And related to this, really want to try hard not to be isolated, alone, or unprotected. Isolation is an extreme risk factor for returning to the narcissist. And so, if you have access, because I know not everyone does, surround yourself with safe, loving connections that serve as distraction and accountability and reminders that you do not need the narcissist to be happy. Don't engage in conflict or chaos. They may try all kinds of manipulation tactics to pull you into contact with them. We call it hoovering, right? Like a vacuum, they're trying to suck you back up into their orbit. Don't engage. Just ignore. You might feel this like really strong plea of like, I just want to tell them what they did to me or how they made me feel. They don't have the capacity to empathize with you or to prioritize your needs. And so they will not hear you out when you try and defend yourself. And if they appear loving, this is likely a performance. Just stay away. Don't over explain yourself. They don't have the ears to hear you. You don't need to tell them anything. And the less you tell them, the less you feed their ego. Because when you share how much you're hurt, it only reinforces to them how powerful they are over you. Don't give them that power. And don't engage in public sharing or shaming, at least in the first 18 months. We're in a world of like social media disclosures where it's like very easy to hop on TikTok and just kind of like dump to your followers. And I understand that could be so cathartic. I also understand that there might be like this duty to warn other people out there of like this harmful person. but this puts you at extreme risk of narcissistic harm because this puts the narcissist at risk of what's called an ego death, where their reputation is tarnished in the public, which puts you at high risk for revenge. High risk. It can feel really fulfilling to air them out, but it is incredibly dangerous. There may come a time for you to share who your partner is, but immediately we just kind of want to like close the case on it. Instead, we do build up social safety nets. The more people you reunite with, the better. The more you tell that you're trying to stay away from this person and you need help, the better. Not everyone will understand, but almost everyone has at least one person who will love you and try to keep you safe. Do tell a safe, trusting inner circle of your plans. Keep one or two people in the loop about when you're leaving, why you're leaving. You might want to share videos or photos over to them for proof about what happened to you. Keep them in the loop of where you're going or what you might need help with. And then they can serve as like an accountability reminder of the reality if you feel yourself being tempted to go back to your abuser. Do come up with a safety plan. Think of all scenarios. What will you need to do to be safe if they call you? What will you do if they show up to your house? What will you do if they show up to your work or reach out to family or friends or post about you on social media, right? Just kind of come up with a backup plan. If you live with them, kind of one of those basic reminders, do organize and collect all important documents. So if you haven't left yet, start a slow collection of everything you'll need to take with you. You can slowly move them out of the house somewhere safe, or you can stockpile them somewhere where the narcissist won't find. Do seek legal guidance if you have kids or shared assets. You can go to a domestic violence shelter or community organization. There's legal aid. There's pro bono domestic violence divorce lawyers. You can consult with an advocate about getting a restraining order, though it's not always safe to get a restraining order, which is why it's really important to talk to an advocate. You can work with a social worker on how to get benefits and social security support. And you can find a domestic violence trained child advocate for court if you do have kids. Do seek formal therapy if possible. I'm a trauma therapist, so I'm a little biased here, but this is pain that needs sometimes professional assistance to heal from. Healing from narcissistic abuse and the associated trauma is intense and painful, and getting help from someone with adequate training is often the safest way to find healing. Do keep a log of their abuse so you can't be tricked by nostalgic memories. Videotapes during moments of abuse or harm, photos of your injuries or broken items, journal about specific incidents. And sometimes you have to look back on these moments and use them to remind yourself of what you left and why you need to stay gone. And finally, you have to believe you deserve better. Ask, would you let anyone else trade spots with you in the relationship with your narcissist? If the answer is no, then you don't deserve that harm either. You're not the exception. Do the work needed to love yourself with more compassion and more softness so you never feel compelled to return to someone who could hurt you. I have a blog that I wrote. It's called Enduring Active Trauma, How to Seek Help Amid Crisis. And that is just like really helpful tips and steps to do if you are actively enduring abuse.
While I was listening, I was thinking about how a lot of those like don'ts that you listed, they require like having a really clear mind and good judgment. For example, do not engage in conflict and or chaos. So that sounds simple, but it's very hard to do when if they push your buttons or try to
Mhm,
provoke you. And
mhm.
at the same time, I've heard from so many people that when they go through this, they feel stuck in a fog. They are like confused,
Oh,
doubting
yeah.
themselves, struggling to think clearly. So it
Yes.
makes it very hard to follow those don'ts, even though we can see like why it's so important to follow them. So do you
Yes.
have any tips for how to stick to those don'ts, even when you're at the same time dealing with this like brain fog and self-doubt?
Yes. When it comes to almost anything, harm reduction is the model that I teach people through. It's not like you flip a switch where all of a sudden you can't do all of those things. It's how much can I resist doing a little bit at a time. And I know it's so frustrating because not everyone has access to someone who can help them through this, but that is why having connections is so important. Sometimes you need a healthier brain next to you that didn't go through the abuse, who can almost be a sounding board. A lot of this is resisting urges. A lot of this is like being grounded in the present and not dissociative, not kind of like stuck in fantasy, might still be actively manipulated or coerced. And so it can be very hard to like be on steady ground. And that's why it's so important that if you can get a trauma therapist or a domestic violence therapist or an attachment therapist, they can like walk you through the steps on like what you need to do to get safe and stay safe. But like friends and family and people in the community that know what's going on can also kind of act as that buffer. I think the blanket answer to how do you make this easier is to not do it by yourself. And if you have to do it by yourself, then we're talking about harm reduction. Can I ignore every other outreach that they make towards me? Can I ignore every other fight? Like, are there periods of the day where I'm going to just like turn my phone off and not be contacted by anyone so I can like really work on just like building a sense of safety and self-care? The reason it takes people 7 times to leave is because it's so freaking hard to leave. And so if you do leave and go back, you can't have shame. This is the nature of being in an abusive relationship. But interrupting that isolation is like the most important thing you can do.